So it looks like this is now pretty much the finisher of the whole Aoi Cosmos arc. Now, when I actually looked at the spoilers to try and see what exactly Black Sky was going to be, because I like Minnie was very curious as to like whatever the technique was and did. And when they like were first mentioning it was like a big black ball, I was like, oh, I don't really know if I'm happy about that because it didn't seem to have any like special effects or like any attributes or variations and variables to like it's as an attack that did anything, just a very powerful attack. But I really like how it looks visually in the manga. Mishima did a really good job. Also, the fact he just immediately dropped Meteor Breaker beforehand, I really like. So I'll get to that in a second. I'll talk about like the nice color page, Witch's core also in the chapter was mentioned is still being attacked. That's good, as we were told a long time ago with Valkyrie and stuff that the core is the most important aspect of the robots. If you can save their core, you can pretty much, like, if you had to, just download like everything about them into a new body. At least from what we've been told and informed. Like I don't really imagine there's going to be any change to that, just because it's a really easy to understand kind of thing. It's like their heart, but it's they're robots, so it adds that extra little variable of being a machine. But there's like a whole part with like Eraser and Justice. I wonder what he means, like when he was saying how it was like Justice was like asking if he could erase it, and Eraser was saying the corner's dirty. I wonder what exactly he has to do. Like if there's like I'm guessing that with his ether gear, it's something he has to set up. Like he doesn't just turn it on and like mass erase stuff. There has to be something, especially with that whole mentioning of his of something in the like works before he can end up using his ether gear again. But the giant ship just gets ready to try and shoot him. That's when a bunch of the Oasis members come by and like shoot it in the side, so it distracts it. And there's just more battle going on out in space. We see like the main cast. Izuna is gone too, so I'm guessing Izuna is going to be there for the death of Shura and probably going to be the one to kill him. I'm just making a guess that he'll have like a moment with Shiki. Shura and Shiki will have a back and forth. Shiki will not kill him, but then Izuna will show up and kill him. Because if Shiki doesn't do it, I feel like Izuna logically now is going to be the one to do it. She already was somebody that was like a candidate for who could kill Shura in this arc if he does die. But now that we know that she's not in Laguna's like little canister anymore, that she has to have gone somewhere significant. Something about the story has to come about that. But I think like the Shiki and Shura, it like very quickly goes into overdrive. I do like seeing it like the fast like paced version of it, just as it's a quick in and just going into overdrive, activating the form. It doesn't take too long to activate, though I do like the whole like kind of like build up, obviously, of it going critical, but it makes sense if somebody who's trained more with it can use it willingly, like at any given time, especially seeing like Drac and Joe. But Shiki and him are just fighting, and he uses Meteor Breaker. So one of the reasons I really liked him dropping Meteor Breaker before Black Sky is Meteor Breaker was his old big finishing move. Like whenever a character has a finishing move, you should be show that finishing move at least once or twice, pretty much like being used on characters and not defeating them fully, or at least just doing a lot of damage before upgrading them to what like a new higher thing, unless like the higher thing is like temporary. Like, say, like, if Shiki only got this fight or something, but in reality, like, he's obviously, like, learned how to use this at will. But, with Meteor Breaker, he showed it. He, hit Shura. Shura was able to recover from it and still attack him. Use this, like, heavy collision where he just made this giant, like, increased gravity smash of the ground below him. And, it's really cool just to see, like, okay, he used what was his finishing move, like his biggest technique, and it didn't work, so we know he's got one more, so the logical next step is going to Black Sky. Also, we get a little bit of the Ziggy and Nero fight. So I don't know why Nero thought like just ripping the head off of Machine was going to destroy him. Like that, like he should be aware of that. I mean, granted, he is like an emperor, like he's pretty high up. Maybe he just doesn't know entirely about like the mechanical aspect of him, but during that whole bit, he looks over and Ziggy's got the Emperor dice. Now, the whole bit in this is very intriguing because we know that he couldn't use his Ether Gear on it earlier when he tried to like gravity grip it, but there's a whole part even from Nero like saying how like gravity cannot affect my dice, like that's impossible, and then Ziggy just breaks them, and he gives a whole comment of like it's all just matter, it can't resist true gravity. Now the comment about that, my guess is it's kind of like how Black Clover, just really easy comparison just to use or just to give an example just to use because it's it's another currently ongoing series supposed to do on my channel, is like you have magic and you have true magic. So in Black Clover you can have like say like magic lightning, but it's still magic at the end of the day. But true magic turns it into the real aspect of what it's supposed to be. So like Asta could cut a lightning bolt from regular lightning, and it's because of anti-magic, it's going to cut it, and anti-magic's going to take its whole position in the whole equation of like ability swapping as it's going on. But true magic, he shouldn't be able to because it's just natural lightning at that point. So the anti-magic's not going to do anything because it's technically not magic anymore. My guess is Ziggy is pretty much doing the same thing, though the Emperor dice can't be affected by an Ether Gear the same way, because say it's like this, because we know that the Emperor dice, like their relics, they have a very powerful ether connected to Mother and stuff like within them, that the ether inside the objects is just more powerful than the ether applied to it. Like say if a character ended up like way more, like Prime Xenolith gripped onto it with his Ether Gear, because it's like, well, that amount of ether that's in it from Mother is not as powerful as like the whole of Prime Xenolith, so he just pulls it over. Something like that. But say it's just because like Ziggy, like right now his ether applied to it isn't going to affect it, but when he's using actual gravity, then the ether aspect isn't it isn't a factor in it. Like, and then it comes down to, oh, well, he's using gravity on these objects rather than it, the things themselves with like the way that the powers might work. He ends up crushing it, and then Nero should have left at this point. He should have absolutely left. He should have said, nope, I'm gone. Like, I get he's probably pissed that he just destroyed his dice, but he made such a... I feel like this would be so much faster in the anime. I feel like the anime can make this scene better, because it just looks a little slow from the standpoint of the chapter. My cat's is upset right now. She sees another cat. I don't know if that you guys could hear that, but he like just makes a portal with his wormhole Ether Gear and then just kind of reaches through. I feel like the anime version I've seen, it'll be much faster, so it'll look better. Just because, like I said, it just looks a little slow the way that he's kind of just like slowly moving in towards Z. But again, I think that's just a manga thing right now. But after that point, Ziggy just turns around, grabs onto him, and he's like, well, I like that power. I want it to fall to me. And he like starts talking about like the deepest parts of gravity and everything. He uses gravity drain. Now, this is a really weird thing for Mishima to implement for a lot of reasons. Like a lot of reasons right now. I'm gonna go into the biggest one right after I talk about it. So he gravity drains him, and then it goes back to the Shura and Shiki fight, and Shiki's like going about they're just having a kind of like a back and forth of their stuff. Like Shura's like, I'm gonna be more powerful than my grandfather than his father. Shiki's just like, is that all you really care about? Are you willing to hurt others to get to there? And, like, Shura makes a point from his standing. It was like, you shouldn't be afraid to step on some people in order to climb the ladder, to climb up high and reach the mountaintop kind of thing. But he's asking it to Shiki. Like, he's applying the way that he thinks onto Shiki instead of, like, a logical kind of, like, question. Because Shiki doesn't think like that. Shiki says, like, they're not trying to go to the top. Him and his friends are just trying to go forward. They're just on an adventure. And that's when he reaches back. And I really like this technique, especially from the way that it's charged up. Like, he just has this black ball with, like, the, like, darker gravity that almost looks like lightning kind of crackling around it. And this is, like, a small, long Rax lore thing. So, way back, like, during the Midnight fight in Fairy Tail, like, Midnight, when he's using an illusion on Urza, he has, like, this energy attack from, like, the fake giant version of himself. It looks so cool. It's just, like, this little energy ball, and then it's got these energy streams coming around it. It's kind of like streaming behind it in this like almost tattered look. And I was like, man, I want to see more of like attacks like that. It just looks cool, and it looks like very similar to that when Shiki's charging up his attack. And then after that point, like Shura is just kind of like unsure of what he's looking at, and they get like a whole flashback with Zenith. He's like telling Shiki he needs to strengthen the weight of his heart, and he's like the feelings you have for your friends and the courage. It is the courage you have to move forward. And that's also one thing that I think Mishima is doing with this. Like, he had like a theme in Haru as like kind of like the way that the wind takes him, and then obviously like Haru being spring, and then in the series his name meaning wind, but also his magic affinity was light, so he was kind of like the winds and the whole like way that like light can take you suddenly, and then kind of like the light of life almost kind of thing. And then Natsu was like, the whole fire of life, going about like living and just everything based off of like his heated emotions and stuff. Whereas like Shiki as like the weight and the consequences, I think that's kind of coming around it instead, as like even the small characters, because I mentioned it as I've actually mentioned I think all of these ones during the videos that I've done, as like I actually reviewed them. The characters that it shows, one, also just like Shiki looks really cool with like the black sky like hovered above him. I like it that it's an attack actually that is a good chunk hovered above him instead of he's holding it, because like Meteor Breaker's cool, but like Shiki's biggest skill isn't really in, it's not like in punching. Like Haru's thing was he's a swordsman, but he was very much in his talent towards his like combinations. He uses swords. Natsu was like a brawler and a tank. Obviously melee was his thing. Well, more like hand-to-hand melee combat was more his thing. Whereas like Shiki can use like hand-to-hand stuff, but again, his is more of like his flexibility and his agility with his gravity manipulation. And I think something like this, where he's got range to it, is really good, because it adds to like his whole more distance of like how he fights. Because like again, Haru didn't have much when it came to hitting people from afar. Like he's got like Mel Force and stuff, and like Natsu had stuff like his wing attack to a degree. He's got like his roar and stuff, but it's not like neither of them had nearly as much as like Shiki can. Like he's got like the whole cannon. He's got gravity center. He can just kind of like gravity press on stuff. He's got like the whole gravity shot. He's got more range than the other two characters, because I think it makes more sense for a character who's very much more set on his position, because Shiki's agility, his movement with like his gravity manipulation gives him a very good standing of wherever he wants to when he fights. So him having multiple ranges to his attacks, I think, makes more sense to him than the other guys, because again, Haru is a swordsman. Swordsmen are gonna go swing their sword at you. Natsu is a brawler. He's gonna go punch you. Shiki though can melee attack, but again, it's his biggest feature is the fact that through gravity manipulation, he can there's no high ground. All ground around him is ground, because like even in the whole concept of how Shiki flies, he's not like, oh, I made gravity around me 0 so I can fly. He's making it so whatever direction he's going is where he's falling. He can normal gravity manipulate himself, but the whole way that he generally uses it is he's falling in different directions. Shiki's whole set is most heavily based around that of his whole state. I just wanted to mention that because I really like that about what Mishima has done with Shiki's moveset in contrast to like, when you look at like Natsu and Haru's. But the small characters that died, I think, were the important aspect about this chapter, because from a reader's standpoint, none of these characters really did much of anything. It was more of like, oh man, that sucks. Like the tiny robot from Forestra, it was more of like that was unfortunate for that little girl kind of thing. It wasn't that sad. It wasn't a character that had been around. It's not a character that people were like emotionally attached to. The robots that Shiki had to fight when Shura left him in their first round of fighting. Some of the Oasis members, Creed, Jaguar. Shiki wasn't even around for those. Those, like, it's not that those are big important deaths. It's that they're like, you have to think of it from Shiki's standpoint. Because from our standpoint as readers, it's like, who cares about like the random side characters again that we have no emotional attachment to? Whereas from Shiki, these are characters that still died. This is like if you met somebody in real life and then they died some horrible tragic death. You might not have been real close to them, but it's still unfortunate from that happened to him, because from Shiki's standpoint, these are people that he met. These are people that were living, breathing people that he came across that are now dead, that have come across this journey. Like, it's not the same thing again from like looking over at like Rave Master or Fairy Tail, because sites like small side character deaths can affect characters, but it's different because Shiki's way more affected by like the characters that he never really talked to or never really were close to. It's just like, it's still something that bothers the other characters, but I think Shiki just kind of like feels it a little bit more because of like the whole idea of the weight of life. And I think that because it's also happening in Shiki's journey, he might kind of just like see that as like part of it, as something that's going to be happening and something he's going to have to really understand more about. So Shiki in this thing goes and drops like the black sky, because then I think that it's more tied to like the way that Shiki is going to be, and obviously as like an actual adventure, because Haru was on an adventure, but he wasn't like the same type of traveler Shiki is. And same thing with like Natsu and stuff. Shiki's whole journey, and like their base is mobile, like their full base is mobile. They're not like, because like the Fairy Tail Guild is a set building. Haru like and them had ways of getting around, like different vehicles, but like he lives in Garage Island. Like he has a set place to live. Like all the characters have a set place that they kind of go back to. Whereas like the Eden Zero, like they're on the Eden Zero. That's where they live. That's their ship. But the black sky scene also looks really cool. It's like Shiki's just dropping that onto Shura. He's got like the bloody eye. I really want to know if Mishima, what he's going to do with that eye. I like the idea of a bionic eye. I think it'd be really cool if like he could do it where it's just like it looks exactly like Shiki's current eye, but it has an effect and it just adds to Shiki's kind of like character to give him a bionic eye. Or he can put a line through it or something to make it look robotic. Or he can have an eye patch. I'm fine with any of these things. It'd be really cool to see what Mishima can do out of this. Because like I really like when there's like aspects of permanent damage. It doesn't have to be like lose a leg or something. Losing an eye is still pretty wild. But I really do want to see if he's gonna do this one, because generally he doesn't undo stuff. But he can work around it. Like the only time I can really even think of like an actual permanent damage that has been kind of just more so over fixed without it being like something big was Natsu's facial scar. But I think he just did that because he knew Shiki was going to have those two little scars on his face, and he probably didn't want Natsu to keep that. If I could change that, I would definitely give that back to Natsu to take that away from Shiki. It looks so much cooler. But side thing, I think that the eye, I'm guessing, is going to either be bionic or an eye patch. I don't think it can just be healed with Sister. I feel like that would be too easy of a way out without it being as interesting, because a bionic eye is just as easy, but it's more sci-fi, goes with the series, and on top of that, it'd be more interesting for Shiki to have a robotic eye. I think that would be really sick. And Mishima's given fake eyes to people before, fake artificial eyes, and look at Urza. But after that point, I was curious, like when Shura got hit, there's like a weird effect around him, kind of like the lightning that's on his body. Or not lightning, gravity. I wonder if that has to do with like the dark gravity, or like what exactly that's about. I don't think so, because we don't really know what the difference is between the gravities yet. We just know that dark gravity is a thing. But after that point, he defeats Shura, and Ziggy comes on screen. So this is what I was talking about, and this is where one thing I really want to end with. So I'll just kind of mention, like, he uses Wormhole, reaches through, activates the 20,000 antimatter bombs, and then he's just like, well, I'm celebrating my birthday with your death. See ya, guys. I don't even want to go really into like theories around like the whole concept of Ziggy. There's a really interesting part where like you see inside of Ziggy's face, like where the hole is, and there's still like teeth. I don't really know what that's about, because you don't see an eye, and that's probably just the thing with the machine. Maybe like the whole, like maybe he's got more going on inside his helmet, like maybe he's still evolving. I don't really know what exactly the machine is doing. I guess upgrading the machine. But I don't really want to talk about like too much about like what exactly his reasoning to like go like destroy Shiki here is, or how they're going to get away from the Imperial antimatter bombs, because I mean they're not going to die on the planet. They're going to get out. They're going to get out of there. But the big thing I want to talk about is Ziggy having the gravity drain and what that can do, because The whole general concept, he can steal ether gears from people. He can just kind of like download them, because it's not like ether gears aren't the same as like, it's not the same as a set power that you're born with. Like Jujutsu Kaisen, like the curse techniques, you have a curse technique that you're born with. It's not like that where it's like you take the, like, you're just taking their power, and then, you know, one guy, you have, like, say you have two guys, each one has each one has 1 powers. Now one guy has 2 powers and one guy has 0 powers. It's not like that, because ether gears, you can learn how to do ether gear. So I'm really curious as to how that works. Can he? I would prefer it if Mishima has it like he downloads it, like he's a robot. He's pretty much pulling the information how to use it, because you can learn to do ether gears. It's not like now he, like, if you went up to somebody, pulled their ether gear, like ether gear drained them, they can't use ether gear anymore unless it's like they have no ether left or something. But I would prefer if it's he'll just kind of download it, and he has that now too, and the previous character still has their power. Like, instead of it going from instead of it going into one character 2 powers and one character 0, it's like one has 2 powers and one still has 1 power. Because logically speaking, one, it means that Ziggy could just keep gaining powers as the series goes, which would just keep stacking abilities on him to make him harder and harder to fight eventually. But it's more towards what it could do for plot story-wise. And here's the reason. Ziggy is a machine. Ziggy is not just a machine. Ziggy's the king of machines. And not just as the king of machines, he views things as a machine. So as, like, he was displayed with Brigadine and Killer. Brigadine's, like, entire existence was just to be a distraction. He used them as a tool. So his, like, the way he can build his robots and his machines, as well as upgrade and advance himself, is clearly very important to him. Who's also in the main cast? Wise. Wise has a ether gear that can, in real time, reconfigure machines as the user wants them to. That can be really dangerous, because logically speaking, if Ziggy we don't know if Ziggy knows about Wise. It's not like Ziggy knows about everybody on the Eden Zero. We don't know what his extent of knowledge on the main cast is. But if he finds out about Wise, logically he wants that ether gear. And it doesn't have to be the main cast Wise. It could be the old man Wise. Either way, it means that at some point he learns about Wise. Logically, from Ziggy's perspective, he should be going after him. And when I bring up, like, it makes more, I would like it more that if he just got the power instead of it he pulls it out of somebody's body. Would be like, well, then what if he gets it from Wise, and, like, does Wise lose all powers and he's done, or does he die? I don't really want that to happen. I'd rather it be like if he caught Wise, took his ether, like, pretty much copied his ether gear, and then gained the ability, that Wise would still have his Machina Maker and still be able to do stuff. That was one of probably the biggest thing, honestly, for me in this whole chapter, because it just opens up a big set of, like, anime sweat drop question marks of just like, what is Mishima planning with this? Because it's just a dangerous thing to give to a villain, but not just a villain. It's like the main villain, the main ongoing villain. That's probably going to be the final villain of the series. Just giving him a way to infinitely get more, like, not even just, like, I wouldn't imagine it's not like his power now is doubled, or it's like his power is his power plus Nero's ether on top of his. I think it's just like his ether level, but now he has a second power. But it's like, you can just keep adding powers onto people, and it's just going to keep making them more dangerous, because there's going to be more things he can do. Because now he's got Wormhole. Now he can teleport and make open portals. We don't know the extent of that either. Like, the only way I could see it being otherwise balanced is if his gravity-drained ether gears have limitations. Like, maybe it's like he can only use them so many times, or there's an amount he can use them, or he can only store so many, or there has to be otherwise some limitation if it's not like if he can just pull those out of people and then get them and they don't get their powers anymore and he can use them infinitely, that's going to be crazy. It's going to be really difficult for him for any of them to really defeat him in any situation where he's going to get any of these ether gears. The only thing I can really think of is Pino. But yeah, that was a really solid chapter. I really liked it. The Black Sky visuals, all this stuff going on with Ziggy and Nero. I thought this was a really good chapter, and again, like, it makes more sense for, like, the tiny character deaths that nobody really would logically care about, but Mishima was showing him because it wasn't meant to give us impact on these characters' death. It was meant for Shiki. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but friendly like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. Other than that, I appreciate everybody's art. Subscribe and thank you all for listening. Bye.